So as we work our way through this issue with environmental concern, there are three main theories for us to keep in mind in order to make sense of what's going on. So the changes in environmental concern may be grounded in changes in material conditions of society. And the three main theories to think about that are post-materialism, paradigm shifts, and ecological modernization. And as it is in this discipline, there's no right answer. You're going to have to make the decision on which one you buy into. Is it post-materialism? Is it a paradigm shift? Or is it ecological modernization? So post-materialism, we think about this in reference to the theories of Engelhardt, um, where he documented intergenerational cultural shifts in wealthy countries across the world. Um, he made these categories range from materialist to post-materialist values. The material values were concerns about economic and physical security, and the post-material values were seen with a greater emphasis on freedom, self-expression, and quality of life. Um, Engelhardt felt that the older generations were more material, and the younger, newer generations were moving to a post-material value structure. So, materialist goals, well, of course, we want to maintain the order of something, and in this regards, it's the nation. And the primary responsibility of the government is to fight rising prices. Whereas a post-materialist would say, no, we're more interested in giving people more of a say in important government decisions, and we want to protect things like freedom of speech. So you can already see that these ideas are going to be better suited with a more egalitarian democracy, and those in power that don't want that are going to act in ways to prevent that from happening. And so Engelhardt has shown over time through his research a post-materialist increased in and a change in values over time. This theory is based on a theory of generations that suggests that people's values are formed in early childhood and persist thereafter. Once again, older generations are socialized in times when worries about money, health, natural threats, and other things of those sorts were more of a concern, and younger generations get to focus on issues of aesthetics and self-actualization, freedom, and quality of life. I believe this is the case in some respects today, but it doesn't mean that the younger generations don't have these other problems like money, health, and natural threats. Some ways to question post-materialism and environmentalism. One, can it account for environmentalism of the poor? Another question is, why is it that wealthy people in the U.S. show lower levels of concern, which is contradictory to the post-materialist theories? There's also some problems with Engelhardt's explanation and how it rests on the idea that environmental issues are not real material concerns for the West. And then, of course, how ecological threats are often material threats as well. The next idea is an idea put forth by Catton and Dunlap, It's in reference to a paradigm shift. Paradigm shifts, of course, are drawing off the ideas of Thomas Kuhn and how science changed over time. So the idea that people are slowly but steadily adopting a more environmentally aware view of the world. And it's part of the reason is because no longer are humans seeing themselves as exempt from environmental implications. Rather, humans see themselves as more and more connected to the environment, not separated from it. In many respects, we're getting back to the ways some of the historical cultures have seen their relationship to the environment. And this paradigm shift is going to make a differentiation between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. And this debate really is known as the HEP versus the NEP. The HEP is the human exemptionalist paradigm, or the dominant social paradigm, or the technological social paradigm. In this paradigm, humans are viewed as exceptional creations, able to overcome environmental limits. And the basic goal of human society is technological mastery over nature for the purpose of wealth creation. For much of the last 1,000 years, for sure, we've been practicing HEP. And we've been relying on technological solutions to the environmental wrongs that we've done in an effort to force nature to provide for what we as humans feel we need. The new environmental paradigm is the NEP, and it can also be thought of as the alternative environmental paradigm or the ecological social paradigm. In this one, humans are viewed as part of nature and need to maintain a sense of balance to live within the limits of an interconnected world. This is the ideal that we are being forced into in many respects. We are beginning to realize more and more how much we are constrained by the environment. And I think this is only going to get more problematic as we move forward, as climate change becomes more and more of a problem. What's the general support for paradigm shifts? Well, initial research showed we tend to hold on to our paradigms even in the face of contradictory science. And this is something that we learned from Kuhn, that it takes a lot of force to change the direction of science. And science will hold on to its old ideals until it as an institution is forced to change. But when we do change, we eventually seek to bring the two paradigms of evidence of the external world into better correspondence. So once there's enough evidence to push us over the hump, we as a scientific community want to try and make sense of what's going on. And that leads to what we know as a paradigm change. What are some questions about the paradigm shift? Well, there's a problem of reducing complex matter of environmental ideology into two categories. Maybe there's more than HEP and NEP. Another problem is, how do we decide which ideology represents the environmental ideal? So once again, we are going to have to make a choice for ourselves, which idea we think we should support. A lot of what we know about this is known through survey research, and survey research has some real problems with it. And it's difficult to assess long-term ideological change, once again, with surveys of current public opinion. But with that said, especially in reference to surveys, most of science that relies on surveys has that same problem. And the last idea is ecological modernization. This is a recognition of environmental problems, especially environmental problems that are starting to reshape the institutions and everyday social practices of modernity. This ecological modernization is going to be very much in line with economic modernization. So, if you're looking for something that's a little more critical, this is not going to be your one. This idea purports that a shaping and reshaping occurs at levels of our institutions, and the social practices that we engage in eventually change. And that economic and technological order of society needs to take in consideration a new concept, which is ecological rationality. And once these facets of economic modernization start to factor in ecological rationality, the systems will stabilize. This leads us to an idea of industrial ecology, where industries progress at retooling their businesses and seeing environmental issues as opportunities. And these opportunities indicate inefficiencies in their operations and encourage them to change. And it also creates and develops new laws and regulations which encourage economies to recognize services we gain from the environment, becoming more, which in turn forces these industries to become more and more eco-efficient. Ecological modernization. One way of thinking about this is how it reshapes our daily practices. Well, we see household appliances becoming more and more efficient. And we also see an experimenting with new ways of living that reduce personal consumption of ecological services that we are ultimately ignoring. Things like biking, car sharing, ecological design in homes are all designed to make the structures and the material that we rely on more ecological, but we're not reducing our use. And one thing that we have to think about is there's a global scale of ecological modernization. Moll argues that many of our greatest environmental problems are global in scope, and many of our greatest environmental successes have been global as well. The ISO 14000 standards, the Montreal Project, the Kyoto Protocol, all of these require a political modernization in order for them to work. Some questions of ecological modernization. Well, one, it really doesn't critique modernization all that much. Another thing is that there's no radical reform claims over that are overly optimistic. It only applies with any great success to few countries in Europe, Germany, the Netherlands, and the Scandinavian countries. It has very little to say about the United States. And of course, it ignores issues of environmental justice, rights, and the beauty of habitat. So in the end, what is the modern environmental movement going to look like? Well, we're going to need a dialogue that connects the natural conscience with conditions of democracy and a material state of the environment. We're going to have to take a view we're going to have to view the environment as morally attractive, morally compelling, and morally threatened. And we're going to need to see much more increased partnerships in the United States.